All right, everybody, we're back. We might be having a little bit of technical difficulties today. I think you got that intro twice. Not really sure what happened, but we are back today for another Rapid Fire Live, where we do rapid fire features, rapid fire fun, rapid fire coaching, and rapid fire content. Today, we've got two amazing features with two incredible men that I am absolutely excited to have here. They are both individuals that I've gotten a chance to meet, interact with, build relationships with, and they are both men that I feel connected to, inspired by in the way that they choose to live their lives and the way that they show up. And so I am absolutely grateful. Given that we've got two guests today, we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to bring up the first guest here in just a second, but I want to give a little bit of an intro on this individual. I met Erik Cabral probably a year and a half ago. And what was interesting is we met through a mutual friend on this idea of reps. And how do we get more reps in the things that we do? And how do we get the practice? And how do we get the rhythms? And how do we get the way that we can show up in the world? And the second I met Erik, it was as if I had already known him. He and I felt connected right away. And I think it's because of the way he leads with his heart. He is a heart-centered entrepreneur that shows up and is very clear on the fact that being a husband and a father is also one of his top roles, one of his top priorities. And you can feel that in everything that he does. What he's done to shape the brands of so many people and help them truly connect at the deepest level through a variety of modalities, but in particular in the podcast and branding space. This man is absolutely incredible, and I couldn't be more excited to have him here with you today so that you can get to feel the feature of Erik, because he is an incredible man doing incredible things with incredible people. Let's go ahead and bring him in, Wyatt. Erik, what's up, brother man?
Dude, what a crazy intro, man. I love giving intros, right? And people often say to me, dude, you got to come with me and introduce me when hit the stage, man. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. I need you in my life every day.
Well, man, I like to say I'm just a mirror for people. I like to say that I like to help people see what they're absolutely possible of. And so my intro, bro, is exactly how I experience you.
I love it, dude.
So, obviously I've got your bio and some different things, but I'd rather just talk about who you are and who you are to me.
100%.
And the reality of it is that's what connects us. So Erik, man, I talked a little bit about who you are to me, but why don't you let everybody know who you are and what are some of the things that you're up to? And then we'll dive into a couple of conversations because you're doing some really cool stuff, brother.
I appreciate you, man. So good to see you again, by the way, brother. It's been too long. You mentioned a lot of the things that I lead with, often called a heart-centered entrepreneur, by you and some of their peers and friends and partners. And I think that has to do with a lot of what you said in your intro in terms of I'm a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family. And I think that a lot of us get that reversed, oftentimes mix that up. And I was that dude in corporate America for over 20 years, man. I was just grinding and money. And how do I pay the bills? And how do I get to the next level? How do I buy a BMW? And just got all caught up and wrapped up in all this stuff, right? Material stuff mostly. And my ego, right? So that was a thing that I had to shed and figure out, how do I become something else so that I can succeed at another level? And that was basically becoming a business owner and an entrepreneur. And I had to realize that there had to be a lot of self-exploration. There had to be a lot of looking in the mirror and figuring out, what have I done up till this point that isn't working for me anymore? So landed here, man. And now I'm blessed to be here with you and produce, brands and podcasts for people, not just for us, but for dozens and dozens of clients. So yeah, blessed, brother.
Man, I appreciate all of that. I think back to our very first interaction. And I think one of the things that really struck me about you was the level of vulnerability that you were comfortable expressing with another man that you met for the very first time, right? And you're laughing because you remember that first conversation, right? And both of us felt that connection, and we both went pretty deep in some very specific ways. But I think it's really interesting because everything you just articulated and everything that you just outlined was really about you getting clear in yourself so that you could understand how do you live the best life. And part of that requires vulnerability so that you can actually lean into the areas that are not working for you, or you're not showing up, or that you're creating damage in and around your world. And so what I'm curious about is, what was that turning point where you decided that you needed to get more clear? Because you getting clear is also what's helped amplify the clarity for the brands that you work with and the other individuals.
Yeah, I wish I can liken it to one particular moment, because it's been an evolution over time, and I'm still a work in progress, brother. I'm
We
always
all are.
looking. Yeah, yeah. I don't have it figured out, but I have it a little more figured out than I did had yesterday. Or then, so now, I mean, one of the pivotal moments was leaving corporate America for me. You know, like understanding that wait, I'm caught in a hamster wheel here, and I haven't seen growth and opportunity anymore over the past few years of my last few time the time that I spent in corporate. And I was like, man, I feel like I hit a glass ceiling. So I was just like, I got to rip the band-aid off, just like leave and not go back and burn the boats. And I didn't tell my wife I was burning the boats. I was like, hey, if this entrepreneurship doesn't work out, maybe I'll just go back. That's the safety net. I can easily get a job. But she had no idea, bro. I just burned the boats. But then it was incremental steps, like I was still operating with that limiting belief system that I, I was a pro at, and working with clients and being angry that they didn't see my value and my worth, and realizing that no, over time, and I didn't figure it out overnight, was like, I have to be the one that brings value. And like, if I want money, like a lot of people here probably watching, like I want more money in my life. Well, you have to attract that by being valuable in the marketplace. Money is a byproduct of value. And once you become valuable in your industry or anywhere, then you can, be like Brian and like, hey, I want this amount for the stage. Or like you can be like Gary V and, hey, I want this amount for you to have my hour of my time, because that's how much value I bring to you. So that's what started to, that took years, bro. That took years for me to realize, like, wait a minute, I need to become something better in order for people to pay me more, basically.
So what I also appreciate is that you burned the ships and you didn't necessarily tell your wife. I'm a big believer, and I don't believe in having a plan B, right? And that's really the burning the ships mentality. When I left corporate America, when I executed my buy sell in that business and I left, it was kind of the same deal. I was all in, right? Now my wife knew about it and we talked about it in full disclosure. But the point is that if we know that no plan B is an option and you kind of leaned in that way, what I'm really fascinated on is there is no possible way that you can be as successful in creating brands as you are unless you consult with the entrepreneurs that you work with beyond the external brand. Because what you and I also realize is that it's about the integration of the life that we're living and how congruent are we between our personal lives, our business lives, but really the one life that we live integrated. And so what I'm curious about is, as you're helping people develop the brands and decide how they're going to position it in the world, how do you foster that conversation to bring their uniqueness, their value, and their vulnerability to truly connect out into the world?
Yeah. I mean, first off, I have gotten to the point where we're very, very selective with who we work with. Now, there are certain sort of red flags, for lack of a better term, that indicate, hey, maybe we're not like the right fit. And that's okay. There's other people that can be the solution for you. But for us, we work with mission-driven entrepreneurs. We want to understand what you're trying to do with this podcast you're creating, because that's what we do. We launch and produce podcasts on a weekly basis, and all the social media promotions around it and micro content, Joe Rogan style. Well, if you're talking about money and ROI and like I need to create something that's going to directly affect and make me money right away, well, then we're probably not the best fit, and that's okay. So that right off the bat, Brian, is something that I'm looking for. I'm looking for people that understand, like, I have a mission, I have value, and I want to put it out into the world, and I want to pour into my community, or I want to build a community of people that I can pour into. Now that's something I can get behind. That's something that I feel is powerful and aligns with my mission, which is to make the world better one mic at a time. So once we align our missions this way, it's like, oh man, this is good. This is gold. And now we can do something bigger together.
I love that. I also know the intentionality that you bring to really being able to integrate your own life. And so what I would be curious about is, where and how do you set up the rhythm of your life to, again, be that family man first who also runs a business versus a businessman who also has a family? So if that's how you lead, how do you do it in your own world? And what has the impact been with your wife, your partner, your kids?
Yeah, it's such a good question, man. I appreciate that. It's really understanding the concept that you have to put the oxygen mask on first. Now, a lot of us, especially parents, are like, okay, what do you need? What do you need? You run and they fall, and you want to help them, and you want to make sure they don't get hurt. Now, the thing is, I ensure that I'm always trying to be the best me every single day. Now it's going to fluctuate from amazing to really not so great. But I wake up early, right? And I make sure that, I'm taking care of myself, the oxygen mask before everyone wakes up. So I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I go on a run. I do some yoga, I do some meditation, and I do these things. And I've created these habits where now I don't think about it. It's just part of my routine. Now that took years, Brian, years and years and years to develop. And it wasn't all at once, like I love Hal and his savers with Miracle Morning. It was my version of that. I do all those things, but not in the right order, in different order, but whatever it works for you, that's what worked, for me. And I find that consistency in those habits creates success over the long term for you, because now I'm not going to blow up. I'm not going to put my fist through the wall like I used to when I was angry because I took it personally. Now I step back and I go, how am I accountable? I take ownership over the situation. And now I also see and have empathy for you and your perspective and the lens that you're looking at it through. And then now I just like calmness, because I'm putting the oxygen mask first thing in the morning.
I love it. I'm curious, what does connection with mean to you? And what do you think is the best way to connect with other people? And I think you even put in here, if you could describe it in one word, I'd be curious for you what that looks like.
Connection in one word. And you said it, bro. Vulnerability. If you come with chest wide open, you're the Tin Man, right? And you open it up and you show your heart, like Brian was talking about when we first, and thank you for reminding me, man. Like my wife walked in during our conversation. We were probably 15, 20 minutes in. It wasn't even long. And she was like, who the heck were you talking to? Like we were just pouring into each other, like on the verge of tears, man. I had just met you. But that's what I'm talking about. That level of vulnerability, which gives permission to the other person to do the same. And that's where the magic happens, man. That's where the connection truly starts.
By the way, I love that answer. You may remember I say that vulnerability and authenticity are the glue that binds human connection, right? I actually genuinely believe that to my soul. And it's very difficult for us to get there. And you may also remember that my purpose in life is to allow my truth to give others permission to live theirs, which is a living example of how do we actually become vulnerable and how do we actually connect through our own mutual stories and allow ourselves to not just extract the stories from our own lives, but be able to tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories to shorten our own curve to learning. And you live that way. You absolutely embody all of that. And Erik, I'm so grateful that you're in my life. And yes, it's been too long. We'll have to reconnect soon. And I want to have you back for a longer feature as well. How can people find you? Because you're doing some really good work and you connect with people at such a deep level and help them connect with their external worlds at such a great level because of the work that you do. I want to make sure people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Well, I want to give something to your community. If you're a podcaster or you're looking to get started a podcast, if you go to ericcabral.co/guide, and that will be the place that you can find like all the stuff that I've learned over the years to really set up so where I am now in terms of success in that becoming a great host, a great interviewer, a great guest even. All of that can be found at that link, ericcabral.co/guide.
Okay, perfect. We just got that up on the screen now so everybody can see it. So Erik, man, dude, I'm really grateful that you jumped on today. And again, we'll have to jam again sometime soon, okay?
100%. Yeah, miss you, bro.
Take care of you, brother. We'll talk soon, okay?
Congrats, man. Take it easy.
See ya. All right, so our next guest is someone that I met a few months back. And what's really interesting is I always freestyle these intros based on who I know them to be. And this was an individual that we spent 2 or 3 days in a room together, but I don't even think we talked while we were in that room until the very end. But I think there was a curiosity and a connection that we both felt. And the second that we did communicate, it was real. This man demonstrated something to me that said a lot about who he was. And I want to hit on that before I even bring him up. He is a man who spent 11 years in the Army. And so first and foremost, Kevin, I'm going to thank you for your service. And I'm going to thank you and your family for your service, because it is not lost on me the freedoms that we all have for individuals like yourself who sacrifice so much for us to be able to be here. But this leader, this person, we were doing a challenge where people had to hold water bottles out in front of them. They were literally in the midst of a keynote that I was giving to be able to demonstrate the weight of the armor that we carry. And Kevin got up out of his chair, walked over to one of the individuals, and literally silently started coaching them in her ear. He was literally the cheerleader, the voice, the rhythm, the heartbeat, and her strength in that moment so that she could borrow his strength. And what he's doing in the world today in terms of what he's doing in his private sector work, but how he's established just an incredible watch brand to be able to help people understand time and connect to the outcast in themselves is unreal. And so, Kevin Junkans, I want to bring you up, brother, and let's jam. How you doing,
Man,
pal?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good, dude.
Dude, you're good on that intro stuff, man.
I just speak about what I see in people, brother, and that's what I see in you.
I appreciate it.
You're a leader, and
appreciate
you're the strength behind a lot of people, and I just don't think that that you often probably even get the recognition for that.
Oh, probably not, but I don't think I give it to myself either.
It's not just yourself, and I think that's okay. So, just like I did with Erik, brother, I talked about who you are, but why don't you give the world a little bit of who you are and what you're up to?
So lately I'm up to working myself to death. It's been rough at work. But before the past 3 weeks, I did spend 11 years in the Army. I was an infantryman, went to Afghanistan. I did the private sector thing for a company called Triple Canopy and worked in and out of Iraq for a year and a half or so. I was on the ambassador's protection detail, came home, did like normal stateside stuff, and got back into executive protection on the private side, stateside, working for, luckily I've avoided celebrities for the most part. And it's just been CEOs of tech companies that I've been working with lately. I have the watch company. I think I'm coming up on year 6 of that. I think it's year 6. But those are just things I do. They're not necessarily who I am.
Yep.
It's sometimes it's like a balancing act. Like what you do isn't necessarily who you are. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have a freshman and a senior. That's a little weird. I don't think I'm nearly old enough to have kids that are that old. So yeah, that's something.
Man, I want to thank you for your service. I'd love to learn a little bit more about Outcast watches, but what I really want to do is I think that one of the interesting facts that I didn't know about you that I want to highlight is that you actually went to culinary school and you were going to open a food truck. So can you talk to me about that path and what led you down there? And then obviously that was also part of the thing that led you where you are now.
It did. So I used a GI Bill to get my undergrad, and I still had money left over. And while I was getting my undergrad, my wife and I bought a coffee shop, and that came about kind of happenstance, as it does. So the plan was to take that coffee shop from the one location it was. We had a building that was going to be a drive-through only concept of a coffee shop. The city of Round Rock, where I lived in, were less than helpful about planning and zoning, and things just kept getting more and more expensive to meet their requirements. So while we were going through this, I still had money left over, and I was like, well, fuck it. I'll go to culinary school. If we're going to grow this thing, I should know how to, like, cooking in your own kitchen is one thing, but cooking professionally and everything else that goes into it, not just the cooking portion, but all the stuff that you don't see, like actually running a restaurant, how to order, just all the stuff that goes into it. So I did that. And then we ended up selling the coffee shop. It was way too expensive for what we wanted to do. So I'm in culinary school. We sold our coffee shop. So I'll just go work in restaurants, see what that's like. And I worked in some pretty cool restaurants, a lot of scratch kitchens. And I thought, well, maybe we'll open up a coffee shop or a food truck. And we saw, I think that was at the time that the, what was that movie? I think it was called Food Truck, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure it was called with John Favreau.
Yeah. No, I know. I think it was called Food Truck.
I think it was. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. Maybe we can do this. And it turns out cooking in a restaurant is hard as fuck. And yeah, it was not for me, man. like 10, 12 hours a day on your feet at like 100 miles an hour. I'd get in the car at, midnight or so whenever we got off, and it felt like I would just melt into the car. I was so exhausted all the time. And, and we had a dinner service restaurant. So go in there at like noonish, get all your prep done for dinner service. And then the restaurant closes at 9 or 10 or whatever it was. And you're off by midnight-ish. I did not see my family at all. And I didn't see an end to that road. If I was going to keep cooking, that's what life kind of looks like. So I was in that point where, well, now what? I don't want to keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. Maybe I'll go back overseas. It sucks, but you're gone for 3 months, you're home for a month. There's kind of a rotation you can get into. And, I say it, I don't know if it was the best time or the worst time to stumble across this article, but I was up looking for the end of the internet one night, and I read this article about these guys that started a watch brand. And it was really interesting. It was well written. It was filled with like all these tips, and they kind of laid out this yellow brick road of how they did things. And it went from that's really interesting to maybe that's something else. So like Erik was saying, I didn't tell my wife either. like you don't go from what I had done in my past, owning a watch brand or watch company isn't in the path of that. There's nothing that would lead one to believe like, oh, that makes sense. It doesn't. So a few months of me staying up really late at night, talking to manufacturers, drawing, just being very much into my computer and my sketch pad, and me being super cagey with my wife about what I was doing. You feel tension growing, and so finally, she's, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, nothing, just, screwing off, just drawing, whatever. So one night we're laying in bed, and it's like, eventually this is going to have to come to a head because we're really not getting along. And it's just because I'm not telling her what's going on. So we get the, we need to talk. I was like, okay. Close my computer. It's like, what's up? She goes, who is it? I said, who's what? She goes, do I know her? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, who are you fucking? You're up late at night on the computer. You're not telling me what's going on. I was like, oh, that's what you think this is?
You're having a love affair with watches.
It's so much worse. And she's like, what do you mean it's worse? So I open up my computer and I show her, and she's like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And I was like, well, I started this company. Yeah, it was.
So what was the reaction in that moment?
It was kind of stunned silence. Like, I was speaking a different language to her. She had no idea like what the fuck I was talking about. So I walked her through it all, and still not on board. She's like, how much is this going to cost us? I was like, well, now that you mention it, remember all that money I saved up from Iraq? And she's like, yeah. And I go, yeah. So there's a few months of her being really not on board with this until I got my first prototypes in, and the prototypes turned out great. And she was like, okay, I feel a little bit better about it. The watches are cool. How are you going to sell these things now? And so then been off to the races since.
Man, so I have to imagine there was a little bit of relief that you weren't actually having an affair, but obviously the impact of financial risk was something that caught her off guard, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
I had a plan, that it wasn't going to cost me all my money, but that blew up in my face. So it ended up, we had to spend a lot of money.
Yeah. And honestly, that can happen. I've always had an affinity for timepieces, right? And I mean, I've got one behind me, right? I mean, I've always had an affinity for timepieces, and I've just always been fascinated by watches and different things. What I'm curious about, for me, I know the ties of my fascination with timepieces. They go back to my grandfather and a grandfather clock, and he always had an affinity for timepieces, and it was something that I always just really admired. Now, I know you said that it was an article, and these guys doing this, in a watch company. But as is the case with your culinary work, it wasn't something that really drove you or you felt connected to. How has that differed as it relates to your watch company? And have you always had an interest in watches, or is this just now a new passion?
No, I've always had an interest, but it was more like, an appreciation of them, right? Nice watch, nice pair of sunglasses. It makes you feel much cooler than you probably really are, right? But that's about as far as my watch thing went. I'm not like one of those guys that gets super nerded out with watches and knows everything about every watch ever. Man, it's not. I like cool watches. I like the way they look, and that's kind of it. I want to make sure they're well made so I can, pass them down to whoever down the road. And we don't kind of live in a disposable world now. And my grandkids probably don't want a fucking Apple Watch, but maybe they'll want one of my watches, right?
So what differentiates you in the space, and what kind of effort do you go for with your design? Because I know that you also target a pretty specific market, and I'd love to understand a little bit more about, I mean, again, your watches are for everybody, but what's the impact behind Outcast, and what is the passion that you put into the designs around it?
So, it's changed. It's not really changed. Maybe it's changed, but it's evolved over the past 6 years. Because at the beginning, it was just, I think I want to make some cool looking watches. And I was having a hard time, like, you incorporate as one name, but that's not the name that you want to put on the face of a watch. I didn't want to put my last name on it. So a friend of mine that I was in culinary school with, I went and saw him, and, just catching up. I hadn't seen him in a while. I told him what's going on. He's like, man, you were in the Army, you're contracting, then you went to culinary school. Now you have this watch company. He's like, man, you're like a fucking outcast. You don't fit in anywhere. And it was just like an off the cuff comment, just haha, being a smart ass. And then driving home, I was like, oh, man, that kind of feels good, So that's where the name came from. But to hopefully answer your question, it's evolved from more than just a watch, right? Watches are kind of like, they're a commodity. It's not like there's a jillion brands and tons of different watches and styles. And I really didn't know, like, at the beginning, when you first start something, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. I barely know what I'm doing now. So it's changed from just being about the watch. This could be a shoelace company for all it really matters, but using these as like a way to get people together, right? So being outside and hunting and fishing has always been a pretty big part of my life, as much as I try to. And obviously food is a happy place for me.
Yeah.
So it's changed from just being a watch, because you can go anywhere to get a watch, right? As long as it looks cool, you like the way it looks, you should buy it. Don't buy a brand because it has a brand name on it. Buy it because you like the way that it looks. Agree with that. And buy something well made, right? Like, spend a little bit of money, buy something nice that's not going to fall apart on you. But I want to use the company as like a vehicle to be able to go out and do fun shit with other people. Like, I have actual friends now that I've met because of this company that I would have never known had it not been for this company. Like, friends, I went to Hawaii for 4 days with like 9 or 10 guys, and I met them because of this company, and we had an amazing time. So I'm hosting events. So get guys together. We're going to go on fishing trips, go on hunting trips together. We're going to go do things together as strangers and hopefully leave as friends. It's been amazing. That's been the best part of this for me, was making friends that I wouldn't have even known existed before.
So Outcast began as identification as a joke from a friend, and led to a lifestyle brand to allow others who've maybe felt like outcasts in different periods of their lives to come together and have an experience to deeper connect with themselves and each other through the lifestyle brand that you've created.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful, brother.
And kind of by accident,
Yeah.
it's just kind of changed that way.
That's pretty powerful.
But it feels way better than just, here's a watch, buy it.
Yeah. Well, I think it connects with who you are. And one of the big things that I always believe is that if the entrepreneur can allow their business to be a manifestation of who they are and not build a business that they can learn how to fit into, that it's going to seem easier over the long run because of the way that they can integrate it in their life. And though you are still in development, as we all are, by the way, right? What's happening is it's developing in a way that it's becoming a lifestyle brand that fits your lifestyle, so that as the face of the company, it's a manifestation of who you are. And I think that when you can do that, it also feels less transactional and more around impact and connection, which is really what I believe you're trying to do through this. So what I'm excited about, Kevin, you guys have a new one coming out, right?
Yes. 2-ish new ones.
2 new. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So we have, it's this one. It's square-ish.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's made out of titanium. This particular one has a meteorite dial. They're dive style watches, so they have a movable bezel to countdown bezel. We have a high-end Swiss automatic movement in this one. We also have a quartz, and it's expensive, right? They're expensive. There's for all intents and purposes, a lifetime warranty on the watch, not just on you owning the watch, but whoever down the road buys one. As long as I'm still running the company, as long as the company still exists, if you fuck it up doing something cool, we'll take care of it. If you slam it on the ground just because you're mad, well, you're a jerk, and that's on you. But there's a lifetime warranty on manufacturer defects. And if you smash it in a rock climbing, send me a video and send me a picture of it. I'll fix it for you. No sweat. But we have a quartz version also. They're less expensive. Same warranty, same materials. It's just the quartz movements are cheaper. They use or not cheaper. They're just less expensive. They use a battery, so you don't get the sexy sweeping secondhand, but same fucking watch.
Dude, I love it.
Much cheaper.
We've got your website down below. Is that the best place for people to find you and actually find out what's going on with the launch of these 2 new watches coming out?
Yep. I don't know the link off the top of my head, but it's that / some other stuff. There's a link at the top of the page for the pre-sales. The pre-sales are happening now for the end of the month, and they're cheaper during pre-sale. And if you purchase one of the more expensive watches during the pre-sale, we'll cover your cost to come fishing or doing a day trip with us to go do something fun. That's pretty incredible. That's an offer I hope that we'll be able to make sure that people can take advantage of. We'll definitely be taking this interview and we'll break it up into some small clips as well for you to be able to repurpose so that you can promote that as well. Because, brother, man, I love who you are, right? What you're doing is a manifestation of who you are. And I think that that's even more beautiful. And so I'm grateful that you were here today. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or cover today while we're together? No, man. Thanks for having me. Make sure when you repurpose my content, you get my good side. Okay, I'll try to make sure that I just have a black screen then so that it can't be seen at all. I'm totally kidding, dude. You're a beautiful man. You have a beautiful heart, and I'm grateful that we've had a chance to get to know each other. And this is just the beginning of watching you grow with your impact through your brand, with your life. And it's been fun to get to know you and see you as a father, see you as a husband, and see the depth beyond the battlefield man that so many people identify you as. So, Kevin, you are the man. If there's anything I can do to help you, by all means, please let me know. And make sure everybody who's watching and in the repurposed content, go check out Outcast Watches. Kevin's the real deal. He's a good one, and he's doing a lot of good for those in his community. So please connect with Kevin and see how he's actually providing strength and support for so many people in his life. Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Kevin. It's great talking to you again, man. You too, pal. All righty, everybody. So we are going to wrap today with that. We had 2 awesome guests, 2 awesome men, 2 awesome individuals who are actually helping the world connect deeper with themselves and those around them. One through building brands and connecting through podcasts and communication, and another through integrating a lifestyle brand with a timeless timepiece that will allow
it to exist well beyond you and for future generations to remember the legacy you've left for Outcast watches. Thank you all who've been here today. If you all would like to ask questions, you want to get featured for anything, or you want to come in and join our Rapid Fire Community Coaching Program, shoot the keywords Rapid Fire to 602-704-5189. We are taking what we do with our high performance clients and bringing it down to distill it and apply it for everyone so that there is no barrier of entry due to cost. This is one of the areas we can create the greatest amount of impact by bringing people together to connect and allow our truths to give each other permission to live ours and be able to move through those things that keep us stuck in life. Until next time, be great and be you.